Kaizen is a life philosophy of continual improvement, and this YouTube series is devoted to passing knowledge or ideas in the spirit of that philosophy. In this episode, I'm going to give my top 5 tips for people who are fighting game newbies. To give a bit of background, I'm not completely new to fighting games, but I haven't devoted serious time to them in almost 2 decades. The last real fighters I devoted any amount of real time to were Killer Instinct 2 and Marvel vs. Capcom 2 when they were popular in the arcade. Between now and then, fighting games and the fighting game community has gotten much more complex, especially with the rise of fighting game esports and professional video gaming being perceived as much more legit. As a result, I feel like one of those old people that struggles when they first sit down in front of a computer. Sure, they may not understand how to surf the web, but they still have to be constantly reminded that there are keyboard shortcuts for things like copy and paste. Now, there's a lot of beginner guides to Injustice 2 out there, and they give some great information, but I've found that they assume a degree of base knowledge about fighting games, and particularly previous NetherRealm Studio games. In other words, they're catering to beginners as opposed to true noobs. So I wanted to take a step back from that and offer my own top 5 tips for anyone that needs an idea of how to crawl before they start learning how to walk in fighting video games, based on my own new experiences when I picked up Injustice 2 for the first time a few months ago. Tip number 1, develop muscle memory. Learning how to play a fighting game is very similar to learning a musical instrument. When you pick up a trumpet for the first time, the first question you're going to ask yourself is not, should I play this jazz standard or should I learn how to play this classical etude? The first question isn't even, what are the fingerings for a C scale? The first real question you're going to ask yourself is, how the heck do I make a sound come out of this instrument? Now, eventually somebody tells you to play a B flat, and you don't have to think about how you're going to move your air, or what your lips are doing with the embouchure, or what fingering and valves to press down at all, because you've developed the muscle memory for it. But you have to practice those basic fundamentals over and over again before you develop that muscle memory. And fighting games are no different from that. Practicing those fundamentals are important and key to help you to become performance ready. And that leads into tip number 2. Practice mode is your best friend. There's actually a few tools for people to get into Injustice 2, and step 1 is the tutorials. If you don't know about the tutorials, then here you can go down to this bottom here and say that you want to do the tutorials, and it will go through the very basics of the game. So the first thing that it does is it teaches you very basic movement training, and you start off as Batman, and it says, okay, I'm going to learn how to step forward. And it check marks you there, and it says I'm going to learn how to step backward, and then I'm going to learn how to dash forward, and I'm going to learn how to dash backward, and I'm going to learn how to duck. And then it deals with attacks as an example. So here I'm going to hit him with a light attack, I'm going to hit him with a medium attack, I'm going to hit him with a hard attack. And I'm playing heavy attack, sorry, I'm going to hit him with a heavy attack. Now I'm playing this on a PlayStation 4, so it's using the notation of square, triangle, and X. Because this game is also done in an Xbox and because those inputs are different, then there's this universal number language that fighting game players use for just 1, 2, 3. So light attack is 1, medium attack is 2, heavy attack is 3, and then your trait, which we'll go over at some point, is 4. Now the other thing about the tutorials is that there's specific character tutorials that let you get familiar with any individual character that you might want to learn how to play. So if I go into the character tutorials here, and let's just take Captain Cold as an example, because I've already done Captain Cold. And we'll start at the very beginning. So here's Captain Cold, and he's going to be playing against the Flash, his arch nemesis. So it says, okay, you want to execute a Cold Blast? There you go, there's his projectile. And if you use the meter burn button, which is R2, then it releases something additional. And now I've got this big freeze. And if I meter burn it, freezes him up. You execute this frost field, and if I do it with a meter burn, then it eventually freezes them. Although honestly, the trait is what's going to do that more than anything else if you know the trait. But then it teaches you this basics about Captain Cold's combos. And here's one very slick looking combo. Now those are great beginning ideas for how you try to experiment with characters and how you experiment with the initial game mechanics, but really the tool that you want to use the most is a thing that's actually called practice mode. Practice mode is hands down the most important tool for getting better at the game. Even the top tier players in the world use practice mode to hone their skills, to figure out character strengths and weaknesses. There's a term that they use all the time called labbing a character, and that's really what it's about. You're taking your character to the lab and you're figuring out how to deal with your own character or how to deal with certain kinds of things you see out of an opponent and how to be able to counter that in a real tournament or a real match situation. As a new player, practice mode gives you a chance to really get a feel for the game in a low-stress environment. So you have the opportunity to say, if I go in here and I go to the move list and I want to learn combos because I want to get an idea of what the combos are all about. If I hit the triangle, then I can then tag, let's just tag the big combos here, which is this, 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 and this. And then it'll show those combos up on the screen and I can practice and say, okay, showcase combo, 1, 2, 2. Like that. You can also see whether those attacks are high attacks, overhead attacks, mid attacks, or low attacks. And that's pretty important for how your opponent can counter you or how you would choose to counter that if you came across a Captain Cold player. So practice mode, hands down, the most important tool that you can have to get good at a fighting game. You have to practice your moves, practice your combos, practice everything. The third tip I have for you when deciding to play a fighting game is that when you're choosing a character, the first thing you need to do is choose a character with the inputs that are easiest for you to understand. My biggest thing was that Killer Instinct had a particular way that it dealt with combos across all characters. You would hit the same attack twice, light attack twice, and then have a transition button, and then you would hit a different button twice, and then you could finish it after that. So as a result, I have a tendency to always want to hit one button twice because I have this ingrained thing about hitting a button twice is how you start all your combos. And that means that these primary combos for Captain Cold don't do me any good, because if I do 2 1s, then that's not going to do anything at all. You can see that I'm pressing 1 1 twice, and that's not doing anything. I press 2 2 twice, that's not doing anything. I have to do the specific input and think about that. So even if I like this character and I want to do good with this character, that's not the right thing for me. So I decided that I wanted to try to find a character that started with a double hit on the same button, and that ended up being Green Lantern.
Superman. Fighters approaching the Joker's
Green Lantern's primary combo starter starts with 2-2, and it ends with 2-2-3-1 is the primary combo, or 2-2-3, and then you can end it with a few different things. So in that, works really well for my natural instinct from fighting games from a long time ago to say, okay, I automatically think of combos as starting with those 2-2. And then if I do this 2-2-3-1, then that starts that basic 4-string combo. So I started with that. That was the easiest thing for me to understand coming from my experience, coming into a new game. It was very comfortable, and it got me to understand the basic mechanic of how to be able to input combos and how to be successful with them. Now, the fourth tip that I would give to new players is to be realistic about your goals. There's a lot of talk in beginner's guides that talks about frame data. Let me show you that right here, where you talk about any of this frame data over on the right-hand side. There is no doubt that frame data is one of the most important things that you can learn about the game once you reach a particular point. When you start to be competitive, when you start to want to play matches. But again, going back to that crawl versus walk thing, the first thing that you need to do is just learn how to do the inputs and get the pace for what a half circle is, or what a back forward is, or what finishing a combo is in the first place, before you can start to think about, okay, well, is this plus or minus on block? Or if I do this move, then is that plus or minus on block? And if I do it with a meter burn, then that turns it from minus on block into a plus on block. It is important to understand frame data eventually, but learn the character and what they're all about first. Play some matches and understand how that stuff works. Then go back and understand how that frame data can affect the way that you play, and allow that to bring you to the next level of play after that. The final tip that I can give is that you have to understand that professional video gaming is truly professional. There are a lot of videos out there that showcase the best fighting game players in the world, and that can be really intimidating for anyone that wants to dip their feet into a pool that feels like it's full of sharks. But it's important to remember a few things. First, When you see players like Sonic Fox or Dragon or Forever King play, you need to see them in the same way that you see Drew Brees or Maroon 5 or Phil Ivey. Those people or bands are nationally recognizable elites. But if you see Drew Brees break all these records, that shouldn't stop you from wanting to throw the football around and for fun, or to try to learn how to be a great quarterback for your high school football team or your college football team. Or if you see Maroon 5 and you're just like, wow, that guy's a great singer, that band is really tight, that shouldn't stop you from learning how to pick up a couple of sticks or pick up a guitar and just learn how to deal with the E string, learn how to deal with the A string. Professional fighting game players should be seen in that same light as those kinds of professionals. Being intimidated that you'll never be able to beat Sonic Fox is just as ridiculous as being intimidated that you'll never be as good at basketball as LeBron James. That shouldn't stop you from playing the game and enjoying it however you want to enjoy it. The developers of the game at NetherRealm Studios, I feel, have put a lot of different kinds of content into this game to try to appeal to a wide demographic of players. Veterans in the competitive scene, newbies in the competitive scene, casual players that don't ever want to play with other people at all. There's a lot of depth in the content of the game, and if you want to be a part of it, then there's probably something in there for you. Second, the fighting game community is much larger than the people that you see playing in tournaments and posting videos. People who don't think that they're good at the game are not going to YouTube themselves consistently getting their ass kicked unless you're me, because I want to help prove that point, which is why I put some of my ass getting kicked in the background of this part of the video. The skill level of fighting gamers is a vastly wide spectrum, and I guarantee you that no matter what skill level you are, there are hundreds of players that are at a similar skill level as you or worse than you. Third, thus far, I've found that the fighting game community, like the dancing game community that I used to be a part of, tries to be as inclusive and nurturing as possible. Of course, you're going to find the occasional asshole, but for the most part, fighting game players, even the most elite players, understand that fighting games are still such a niche genre, and it's better to encourage new players to get better and keep playing than to push them out and make them rage quit forever. There are a lot of YouTube channels out there that are devoted to tutorials, gameplay mechanics, combo guides, how to deal with certain matchups, and the best channels that put up that content do it because they're passionate about sharing their knowledge and getting feedback about what they post to add to their own knowledge. And they're trying to get that with either new people or with veterans. The bottom line is, if you're not interested in the genre at all, then that's fine. Fighting games are just not easy, and they're not for everybody. But if you are interested, then don't let the intimidation factor defeat you. Take that first step, be patient with yourself, realize that perseverance is going to take you farther than you think that you can go, both in fighting games or in any other thing that you decide to do, and also in your own life. Final thing that I'll say is that one of the most favorite channels that I like to watch daily for videos is one by a guy named Shadinkadink, I think is how you pronounce it. I don't know. I'll just call him Dink because sometimes he calls himself Dink. He's done a lot of videos. They're nice and short and easily chewable, about 4 minutes to 8 minutes usually. There's some stuff that he did way back early in Justice to talk about the very basics about frame data, about how to deal with certain things, but he also starts to go more into depth with combos for individual characters, or how to deal with pressure situations and deal with individual characters. He is one that is truly devoted to trying to make the fighting game community grow and get better, and he puts out content every single day. So I recommend that you go to his channel and check out the stuff that he has to say, because that stuff is really great. I hope that was helpful. I am not great at this game at all. Like, I do okay, but I have a long way to go, and it'll take years for me to get even close to competent at this game. So I understand what it's like to be one of those people that takes a look at these elite players and says, why do I even bother? But I am very stubborn and I am very persistent about trying to get better at things. That's what's helped me become a better drummer and a better musician, a better composer, a better teacher, a better poker player. You have to understand that everything is one step at a time, and you have to start somewhere. And when you have a community like this that tries to be, I feel, as encouraging as possible, then they're there to help you and guide you through those steps. I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions or comments, then please feel free to do that. If you like the material that I have here, then I encourage you to please give me a like, subscribe to my channel, comment on it. If you have any suggestions for future episodes, then I'm definitely open to that.
Green Lantern wins.
I definitely take feedback very seriously, and I will do my best to answer any questions that I have in my comments. Thanks very much, and I'll see you in the next video.